Ginho sat in his office, clicking his mouse on the desk. He was clearly tense and restless. He was focused on dealing with the people who were trying to harm their guild. He didn't spare anyone who went against his leader. Once he was done, he let out a sigh of relief. He had finally handled the leader's biggest haters. Just then, Jin-Woo walked into the room and praised Ginho for his work. Ginho was surprised to see his master show up so suddenly. He had disappeared earlier, and now it felt like he appeared out of nowhere. Jin-Woo asked if everything was fine while he was gone. Ginho said yes, but he noticed something odd. Jin-Woo looked a little strange and worn out. Jin-Woo explained that he had just come back from a dungeon. Since they needed funds for the guild, he showed the high-level crystals he brought back. Ginho was thrilled. These crystals meant they could now pay the staff without worrying. But Jin-Woo looked puzzled when Ginho mentioned the workers. Ginho reminded him that he had said before that they needed more people. He recalled that a guild needs at least 3 people, a director, a deputy, and a staff member. But Jin-Woo didn't see the point. He believed it was better to hire people who already had proven themselves. Even so, it was a serious matter, and Jin-Woo didn't want to go deeper into it. Then Ginho said there was another issue they needed to solve immediately: the name of the guild. Jin-Woo hadn't even thought about it, though it was one of the most important things. Ginho offered suggestions like Song Yu Guild to honor both founders, or Yu Sun Guild, though he didn't like that his name would come second. Then he tried mixing parts of their names, maybe Wu Guild or Zhang. He thought those sounded all right, but Jin-Woo suddenly said, "How about Solo?" Ginho became a little uneasy. Jin-Woo was known as a hunter who always worked alone. Ginho turned away, unsure if it was a joke or not. Maybe his mentor wasn't as perfect as he seemed. Perhaps there really were things even he couldn't do. At that moment, there was a knock at the door. Both of them looked toward it, unsure who it could be. When they opened it, someone asked if this was the office of Jin-Woo's Hunter Guild. It was Hunter Cha. Jin-Woo asked what brought her there, and she said she wanted to join the guild. A few minutes later, they were sitting on the couch. Jin-Woo asked how she knew about the guild. She said that he had asked her to join, but Jin-Woo didn't remember ever doing that. Then he asked if the association or the president had sent her. She didn't know what that had to do with anything. Jin-Woo continued. Maybe Hunter Choi kicked her out of her guild, but she denied it. Jin-Woo didn't understand her reason for joining, and when she heard the guild was called Solo, she was stunned. She couldn't believe that was the actual name. When Jin-Woo asked if she had a problem with the name, Ginho quickly jumped in. He explained that Jin-Woo had jokingly called it Solo and that it wasn't a final decision. Later, Jin-Woo turned away, trying to stay calm and understand what was going on. He looked at Hunter Cha closely, her breathing, heartbeat, and expression. She was clearly hiding her real reason for coming, but she wasn't very good at it. Jin-Woo wondered why she wanted to join so badly. As far as he knew, Lady Cha had awakened just 2 years ago, and her current guild contract hadn't ended yet. She said she could pay the penalty to leave early. Hearing that, Jin-Woo questioned if she was really willing to pay the fine just to join them. He offered her a reward matching her level, but she said it didn't matter to her. Jin-Woo began to wonder what her real goal was. Why would she be so eager to join despite the cost? Meanwhile, Hunter Cha was still thinking. She wasn't sure whether to tell the truth. After all, if she said what she was thinking, people might just call her crazy. She had noticed something unusual. Jin-Woo didn't have the typical smell of mana users. Instead, he gave off a pleasant scent, which made her curious. He had interrupted Leon's press conference and attracted a lot of haters online. But when she learned he was actually an S-rank hunter, she realized he wasn't as bad as she first believed. Still, she had tried to convince herself that someone like him wouldn't even notice her in this dark, cruel world. But in a moment of real danger, she finally saw hope. A flood of fear, pain, and the feeling of being close to death swept over her like cold water. When she woke up from that long, dark state, the president of the Hunter Association was sitting beside her, asking if she was okay. She didn't even know where she was at first, but they told her she was in a helicopter heading to the association. Once they arrived, the president planned to send her straight to the hospital. She asked if Hunter Jin-Woo had also been at the raid, and when the president shook his head, she realized it hadn't been a dream. She had truly been on the brink of death. That moment made her think, what if something like that happened again during a raid? What would she do? Now, she was sitting on a couch across from the man who had saved her life. Her heart felt heavy, her mouth dry. She wanted to say she wished he'd stay by her side for the rest of her life, but she was too embarrassed. Her cheeks turned red, and Jin-Woo couldn't understand what was going on with her. He could tell she was hiding something, but he didn't know what. Still, he began to wonder, could she have planned all of this? Finally, he asked her what her answer was. Huntress Cha clenched her fists. She felt awkward and unsure, but part of her desperately wanted to say it. Jane Wu turned to his friend and started explaining how difficult things were in the hunter world. So much so that even someone like Cha came looking for peace in their guild. She was only about 22 or 23, a young hunter carrying a heavy weight of responsibility. And she had been badly injured during that last raid. Jane Wu sighed and said honestly that, to join the guild, one had to pass a test. It hadn't been mentioned in the letter, probably because the vice president forgot. It was a recent requirement. Jane Wu asked Ginho to head downstairs and get something to eat and drink. Once he left, Huntress Cha asked about the test. Jane Wu noticed her determination and told her the test involved defeating one of his shadow soldiers. She took a deep breath and said she was ready. In fact, she had already decided who her opponent would be. He told her he would select the strongest shadow warrior just for her. Huntress Cha was excited to prove herself and stood up right away, asking when the test would begin. Jane Wu said they'd start immediately and thought the Hunter Association's training hall would be a good place for it. But then he remembered that it would take some time to get there. So he decided to use his shadow exchange ability. This skill allowed him to instantly switch places with any of his shadow soldiers. However, once used, it couldn't be used again for 3 hours, and the cooldown depended on its level. As they were about to head out the door, Jane Wu told her they didn't need to go far. She looked confused, so he explained there was an easier way. But for it to work, she had to stand closer to him, if she didn't mind. When he pulled her close, she blushed. Then he activated the shadow exchange, and within seconds the ground seemed to pull them down as if the shadows themselves were swallowing them. Right after they disappeared, Ginho returned to the room with food. He was ready to say that he brought something to eat so they could talk peacefully, but instead of the two hunters, the room was now empty. He saw a huge orc standing in front of him. Shocked, he wondered where it had come from. But the orc didn't look confused at all. It calmly reached out, took the food from his hands, and began to eat. Meanwhile, Jane Wu and Huntress Cha had arrived at the Hunter Association's training room. As soon as they reached, she couldn't believe how they got there so quickly. Jane Wu smiled. His guess was correct. His skill worked like a portal. Not only could it teleport him, but it could also bring others along. A shadow gateway would appear on the ground, and wherever it pointed became the exit. It usually took 3 hours before he could use this skill again, but it had great potential. It could connect faraway places with ease. Jane Wu told her it was time to begin the test, but then Huntress Cha suddenly said she had forgotten her weapon. Jane Wu jokingly mentioned the pickaxe he had seen her holding back when they were fighting high-level orcs in the dungeon. She blushed and said that wasn't her real weapon. He laughed and said he was just teasing. She said it was fine. She'd find something in the training hall's warehouse. Once there, she opened the door and started checking the weapons. Since training happened regularly, the association had set up a large storage area nearby. It didn't have the best weapons, but they were good enough for practice. After browsing for a while, she chose a sword that felt right and said she was ready. Jane Wu commented that it looked like a basic version and asked if she had ever used one like it. She admitted it wasn't perfect, but added that the monster wouldn't care if she was comfortable or not. What mattered was being able to fight. John Wu was impressed by her mindset. Still, he felt an ordinary shadow soldier wouldn't be enough against her. She might defeat one too easily. So he summoned his commander-in-chief, Igris, explaining that he was the most skilled swordsman among his shadow warriors. The huntress asked how long the fight would last. Jane Wu answered, "Until either you or my soldier gives up." Although he had promised to bring out his strongest, Jane Wu felt that summoning General Bear could be too much. He might end up scaring her. Igris was a better match. As she got ready, Jane Wu noticed the sword she was holding again. He realized she could handle any weapon. Quietly, he pulled out the Demon King's sword, handed it to Igris, and told him to use it in the fight. The duel began. Igris charged forward, sword in hand. As soon as he swung it, a powerful lightning strike hit the floor. But just as Jin-Woo expected, the huntress was incredibly fast. A normal person wouldn't have survived such an attack, but she fought on evenly. Meanwhile, the president of the association was in his office going over paperwork. He glanced out the window and saw lights on in the training room. That struck him as odd. No one had booked the hall that day. He quickly asked his staff to send him the live security feed from the training room. When they checked, they were shocked to see two hunters fighting there. They couldn't figure out how they had even gotten inside. Then the president remembered the helicopter ride when the huntress had asked if Jin-Woo had come to the raid. He smiled, finally connecting the dots. He told his staff to turn off the CCTV feed from the training room and mark it as an inspection in the logs. Back in his office, the floor shook from the impact of powerful blows coming from the training hall. He realized that young hunters like them were the future, full of strength and potential to bring people together. In the training room, something unexpected happened. Jin-Woo was surprised to see Igris get knocked back, crashing into a wall. Huntress Cha stood confidently, saying, "So this is your most skilled swordsman? Impressive." She remembered he had promised to bring out the strongest shadow warrior for this fight. She stood tall, full of confidence, and asked Jin-Woo once again to summon his strongest warrior. He hesitated and warned her. It could be dangerous. But she insisted. She wanted to face him again. That's when Jin-Woo realized something. She must have seen footage of General Burr before. Even so, he started summoning the powerful shadow. Just to be sure, he looked at her and asked one last time, "Are you absolutely sure?" General Burr, even as a shadow, was weaker than when he was alive. But he had been born for one thing, killing hunters. The odds were clearly against Huntress Cha. As Burr emerged from the shadows, he looked to Jin-Woo and asked, "What are my orders?" Jin-Woo told him, "Fight her, but don't let her get hurt." At that very moment, Burr let out a deafening roar. The sound was so powerful that every light bulb in the training room began to shake. Then they shattered, plunging the entire room into darkness. Huntress Cha was stunned. The sheer pressure of Burr's presence was overwhelming. She couldn't believe Jin-Woo had fought this monster alone. But before she could react, Jin-Woo suddenly ordered, "Stop!" He turned to Burr and warned him, "If she gets even a scratch, I won't forgive you." Burr, still glowing with red energy, nodded. "As you wish, my king." Huntress Cha didn't expect anything out of the ordinary. She was ready to fight. But suddenly, one of Burr's soldiers appeared behind her, just like last time. She saw it coming and struck quickly with her sword. The soldier, however, blocked the attack with ease. The order was clear. Burr had to defeat the enemy, not by brute strength, but by using superiority to break their will. And so the fight began. Huntress Cha charged in, slashing with precision. She knew it was too early for a decisive hit, but she kept attacking, waiting for an opening. Burr avoided her attacks with graceful movement, sometimes floating above the ground. Then in a flash, he got close to her and released a sound wave that stunned her for a moment. He grabbed her shoulder and threw her back. Jin-Woo watched closely. He thought the test had gone far enough. "This should be enough," he said quietly. But the huntress wasn't done. She stood up again. "I can still fight," she insisted. Jin-Woo was confused. What was she thinking? He had never seen someone so determined, even when the gap in strength was obvious. Burr wasn't like other shadow soldiers. Even without emotions, he was still a living weapon, and Jin-Woo could feel that his bloodlust was rising. Burr was struggling to hold himself back. On the battlefield, when someone faces death, they instinctively know whether they're the predator or the prey, and once you sense a predator, the body screams, "Run or die." But she didn't run. She kept dodging every strike Burr threw at her. Then suddenly she began her sword dance technique. She moved like a whirlwind, striking with elegance and power. She aimed for a heavy blow, but when her sword collided with Burr's armor, it shattered. She was out of mana. She had one last move left, her ultimate skill, a strike called Dream. She charged, her sword glowing with light, and pierced Burr's body with stunning speed and force. Jin-Woo's eyes widened. Something deep inside Burr had awakened. A command, buried since birth, echoed in his mind. Eliminate all threats. He couldn't ignore it. The light faded, and red rage burned in Burr's eyes. His aura turned fiery, and his fury was visible. He was about to destroy her. The huntress had nowhere left to run. Jin-Woo screamed, "Stop!" But Burr had already launched the final attack. In that split second, Jin-Woo moved faster than anyone expected. He leapt forward, placing himself between Bear and the huntress, blocking the deadly blow just in time. Jin-Woo looked straight at Burr. "I told you to stop. Why didn't you listen?" he said sharply as the dust began to settle around them. Then he turned to Huntress Cha, still confused and frustrated. "Why would you risk so much for this? Why put your life on the line just to join our guild?" Burr, now kneeling on the floor, looked ashamed. He lowered his head and begged for forgiveness from his king. But Jin-Woo only sighed. He looked back at Huntress Cha. "This whole test, it's just a way to step into the unknown. Everyone here is figuring things out. Why would you push yourself this far? What's driving you to take such a dangerous leap?" She stayed silent. Jin-Woo stared at her, trying to understand. "Is it me?" he asked, half joking, half curious. "Is that why?" She looked at him for a moment. Then with a calm but clear voice, she answered, "Yes, it's because of you." Meanwhile, at the American Hunters Association, a man and a woman stood before a powerful-looking hunter, apologizing. But he waved them off coldly. "I didn't call you here to hear apologies," he said. "I want to know how this happened." According to Sellner's